The room was silent except for the soft ticking of an old brass clock mounted on the wall. It was a classroom inside the Naval Leadership Academy, but today, it felt more like a battlefield. The cadets, young, proud, and full of misplaced confidence, had gathered to face what they thought was a test of courage. They didn't realize that by the end of that day, they would learn the hardest lesson of their lives, that true strength has nothing to do with the trigger of a gun, but with the discipline of the mind and the courage of the soul. She walked in quietly. Commander Eliza Wren, known across the fleet as the Sea Captain. Her reputation was both revered and feared. She was the kind of leader whose very presence could steady a storm or silence a crowd. Her uniform was simple, spotless, every ribbon placed perfectly. The creases on her sleeves were as sharp as her gaze. No one dared to whisper when she entered, yet that day, a few of the younger cadets exchanged smirks, trying to test the limits of authority. For months, rumors had circulated that she was too calm, that she never raised her voice, and that no woman could have earned that many medals without luck. It was arrogance, youthful arrogance, that made them forget what kind of person stands at the helm of a warship through gunfire and thunder. The exercise that day was supposed to simulate a hostage scenario. The cadets were divided into groups. Each group was tasked with responding to different high-pressure situations under Commander Wren's observation. It was meant to test strategy, communication, and emotional control. But one group, 4 cadets from the newest intake, decided to take it further. They wanted to prove something. Not to the commander, but to themselves. They thought they could catch her off guard. When she entered the simulation room, they were waiting, masked, armed with training weapons loaded with blanks. The plan was simple: to see how the Sea Captain reacted when she wasn't in control. To see if she could still stay calm when she was the one being threatened. As soon as she stepped through the door, one cadet, a tall boy named Mercer, stepped forward, pointing the gun toward her. "Hands up, Commander," he said with a grin. The room went still. The others in the observation area froze. Everyone waited to see what she would do. But Commander Wren didn't flinch. She didn't move an inch. Her eyes, steady and unreadable, met Mercer's with such quiet intensity that the grin began to fade from his face. "Is that an order, Cadet?" she asked calmly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the room like thunder. The air grew thick. Mercer hesitated for a moment, then raised the weapon higher, pressing the cold barrel lightly against her temple. That was the moment when everything changed. No one spoke. No one breathed. Even the cadets who had thought this would be funny were now unsure. The instructor monitoring from the booth didn't intervene immediately. He knew the commander well enough to understand that she was in complete control, even now. Commander Wren stood perfectly still, her posture straight, her hands slowly rising just to shoulder level. Her expression remained calm. "Do you think you've taken control of the situation, Cadet Mercer?" she asked. Mercer swallowed. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "No," she said softly. "You've lost it." Then, before anyone could blink, she moved. It was a blur, a perfectly executed maneuver born of years at sea, in combat drills, in real battles. She pivoted to the side, grabbed Mercer's wrist, twisted the gun from his hand, and pinned him to the ground with one motion so fast that the others didn't even react until they heard the clatter of the weapon across the floor. She didn't hurt him, just enough force to make the point. Her tone, when she spoke again, was steady as a calm tide. "Lesson 1, she said, her eyes sweeping over the shocked faces of the cadets. "Never point a weapon, even a fake one, at someone you don't understand." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't anger in her voice. It was something deeper, disappointment mixed with quiet authority. She stepped back, allowed Mercer to stand, and turned to face the entire room. "Do you all know why I didn't react the way you expected?" she asked. No one answered. She walked slowly across the room, each step deliberate. "Because fear doesn't control me. And because leadership, real leadership, means knowing when not to respond with force." She stopped, looked at Mercer again, then at the others. "When you pressed that gun to my temple, I remembered the night I faced a real one, not in a classroom, not in a drill. Out there on the open sea." Her voice softened, but her eyes remained distant, like she was seeing a memory unfold. It was during a rescue mission in the Indian Ocean, she continued. Pirates had taken hostages from a cargo vessel. The waves were 20 feet high, the sky darker than ink, and I had a crew of 19 young sailors who were trusting me with their lives. When we boarded the hijacked ship, one of the pirates, a boy not much older than you, Mercer, held a gun to my head. The room was utterly silent now. I looked at him, she said, and I saw fear. Not malice, not hatred, just fear. He was shaking, terrified, pretending to be powerful. I didn't draw my weapon. I didn't shout. I talked to him. I told him to put the gun down before the sea took us both. And you know what? He did. She paused, letting the words sink in. Because control isn't about dominance. It's about calm. It's about knowing the storm, inside and outside, and mastering it. She faced the cadets directly. That's why it's unwise to threaten a sea captain. Not because she's dangerous, but because she understands danger better than you ever could. The cadets were visibly shaken. Mercer lowered his eyes. Ma'am, save it, she interrupted gently. You're not the first to make that mistake. You won't be the last. But you will learn. She motioned for everyone to sit. Then she continued. Not as a commander lecturing subordinates, but as a teacher passing on something sacred. You think leadership is about being in charge. You think it's about giving orders, holding authority, being the loudest voice in the room. But it's not. Leadership is what you do when you're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options, when the sea rages and your crew looks to you for hope. It's what you do when fear grips you but you stand anyway. She looked around at their faces, some pale, some ashamed, some deeply thoughtful. I've led men twice my age and twice my size, she said. And I've earned their respect not by yelling, not by showing force, but by staying calm when they couldn't. The sea teaches you that. It doesn't care about your gender, your pride, or your rank. It only respects discipline. Then she said something none of them would forget. You can press a gun to my head, cadets, but you can't make me lose my composure. And that's what makes a true captain. The cadets listened in silence as she began to dismantle the weapon, piece by piece, right there on the table. She explained how each part represented an element of control. The trigger, she said, is impulse. The part of you that reacts without thinking. The chamber is focus. It holds your potential, your choices. The safety, that's discipline. It keeps you from acting until it's time. She reassembled the gun, placed it down gently, and folded her hands. If you lose discipline, she said, you lose everything. A hand rose in the back. Cadet Alvarez, known for his sharp mind and quiet nature. Commander, he asked carefully, why didn't you report us for misconduct? You could have had us expelled. She smiled faintly. Because failure isn't the end of learning. It's the beginning. What you did today was reckless, yes. But it gave me the chance to teach you something no textbook ever could. Her voice grew softer. I've seen too many good officers fall because they couldn't control their fear. They thought courage meant aggression. But courage, she paused, is standing still when everyone else runs. It's holding your line when chaos surrounds you. She took a deep breath, then continued. When you wear this uniform, you represent more than yourself. You represent every sailor, every officer, every person who ever put their trust in the Navy. When you act carelessly, you dishonor that trust. Then, turning to Mercer again, she said, you thought pressing a gun to my temple gave you power. It didn't. Power without respect is weakness. But respect without fear, that's leadership. The cadets were quiet. Some looked guilty, others reflective. The commander's words had cut deep, not with anger, but with truth. You see, she said, there's something the sea teaches that no academy can replicate. It humbles you. Out there, titles don't matter. The waves don't care who you are. The storms don't pause for your mistakes. If you can't master yourself, you'll never master the ship. She paused, letting the silence stretch. I remember once, she went on, a young lieutenant lost his temper during a crisis. He shouted at his crew, panicked, made a rash order. It cost us an engine. The damage was repairable, but the lesson wasn't about mechanics, it was about emotion. The moment you lose control, the sea wins. Her eyes met each of theirs, one by one. So when you held that gun, Mercer, I saw the same mistake. You wanted control, but you let emotion guide you. You thought dominance was strength. But strength lies in restraint. The cadets nodded slowly, understanding now. Then she told them the part of her story that no one knew. When I first became captain, she said quietly, I faced a mutiny. The word hit the room like a wave. Yes, she continued, my own crew. They didn't trust me, thought I was too young, too inexperienced. One of them even tried to take command. I could have punished him severely. Instead, I gave him a task. I told him to lead the night watch through a storm while I observed. By morning, he came to me, drenched, exhausted, and humbled. He realized that leadership isn't about control, it's about responsibility. From that day, he never questioned my command again. She smiled faintly. Sometimes, the best way to teach is not through punishment, but through experience. Her words were met with quiet respect. Even Mercer, who had started the whole ordeal, looked at her with genuine admiration. Ma'am, he said, his voice trembling, I'm sorry. Truly, I didn't understand. I know you didn't, she replied gently. But now you do, and that's what matters. She stepped closer, placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. You're going to make a fine officer someday. If you remember this, never confuse fear with respect, and never let pride make your decisions. She turned to the group. You all wanted to see if the sea captain could be shaken. But you learned today that storms don't frighten those who've already sailed through worse. There was a pause, then slow applause began from the back. The cadets who hadn't been part of the incident stood in silent acknowledgement of the lesson they'd just witnessed. Commander Wren raised her hand to stop them. Don't applaud, she said simply. Reflect, because one day, it'll be you standing in my place, facing your own test. And when that moment comes, when fear grips you and the weight of leadership feels impossible, remember this day. Remember how calm feels stronger than chaos. The training session ended, but none of them left right away. They stood there, quiet, absorbing the gravity of what had just happened. Later that evening, Mercer sat alone in the dormitory common room, staring at his reflection in the window. The moonlight shimmered off the sea in the distance, calm, endless, patient. He replayed every second in his mind, the way the commander had looked at him, not with anger but with understanding. The way she had disarmed him not just physically, but emotionally. That night, he wrote a letter, not to apologize again, but to thank her. You taught me today, he wrote, that the greatest weapon a leader can carry is calm. When Commander Wren received it the next morning, she simply smiled and folded it neatly into her pocket. Another cadet had learned the way of the sea. Years later, that same cadet, Lieutenant Mercer, would stand on the deck of his own ship, facing a storm that threatened to tear everything apart. His crew looked to him for orders, for reassurance. And in that moment, he remembered her voice. The moment you lose control, the sea wins. He steadied his breath, raised his chin, and said calmly, we hold our line. We trust the sea, and each other. They made it through the storm that night, not because of strength or speed, but because of composure, the lesson that began the day he pressed a gun to the temple of the sea captain. And when he later told that story to his own cadets, he would always end it with the same words she had said long ago. You can threaten a captain, but you'll never shake the sea within her.